The alarm bells rang across the colony at dawn. Commander Jake Morrison rushed to the control room, his boots hitting the metal floors hard. The screen showed what everyone had feared. 7 massive ships hung in the sky above Kralos Prime, blocking out the morning sun. They were Vexian warships, each one bigger than the entire human colony. Jake looked at the communications officer. "Get me a line to their commander, now." The colony had been on Kralos Prime for 3 years. 200 humans called this place home. They had built farms, homes, and a life here. The planet was beautiful, with red forests that stretched for miles and mountains that touched the clouds. But it was also dangerous, very dangerous. The Vexians were not here to talk. Their message came through clear and cold. "Humans of Kralos Prime, you have 48 hours to leave this planet. Pack your things and go. If you stay, you will die." The Vexian Dominion claims this world. Jake felt his heart sink. The Vexians had conquered 47 star systems. No one had ever beaten them. They had weapons that could turn cities to ash. They had armies that never lost. And now they wanted Kralos Prime. In the medical bay, Dr. Lisa Sullivan was checking on patients when the alarm went off. She knew what it meant. Her husband Ben ran in moments later. He was the chief engineer, a big man with kind eyes that now looked worried. "Lisa, where's Katie?" he asked. Their daughter was 8 years old, small for her age, with bright green eyes and brown hair that never stayed in its braids. Katie was special, though her parents didn't fully understand how yet. "She's in the education room with the other children," Lisa said. "Ben, what's happening?" "The Vexians are here. We have 2 days to evacuate." Lisa felt cold all over. "This is our home. Where would we even go?" Ben had no answer. They had used all their money and resources to come here. There was nowhere else for them to go. Katie sat in the education room, but she wasn't paying attention to the lesson. She was looking out the window at the red forest. She had always loved the forest, even though everyone said it was too dangerous. Something lived in those trees, something big and powerful. The adults called them Razorbacks, and they were terrified of them. Katie wasn't scared, though. She dreamed about the Razorbacks sometimes. In her dreams, they weren't monsters. They were something else, something amazing. The teacher, Mrs. Claire Brooks, tried to keep the children calm, but Katie could hear the fear in her voice. The other kids were crying. Katie just kept looking at the forest. Commander Jake Morrison called an emergency meeting. Every adult in the colony crowded into the main hall. The room buzzed with frightened voices. "Listen up," Jake said, his voice cutting through the noise. "The Vexians have given us 48 hours to leave. They have 7 warships and at least 1,000 soldiers. We have 200 people and maybe 50 weapons that might hurt them. So we're just giving up?" Someone shouted from the back. "I didn't say that," Jake replied. "But I need to be honest with you. We can't win a straight fight. Their technology is too advanced. Their numbers are too great." A woman named Amy Chen stood up. She was the colony's security chief, tough and smart. "What about the Razorbacks? The Vexians are scared of them. I've seen their scanner reports. They won't land their troops anywhere near Razorback territory. The Razorbacks would kill us just as fast as the Vexians," someone else said. "They're the apex predators on this planet. Nothing can stop them." "Nothing except maybe a little girl," Ben Sullivan said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "What are you talking about?" Jake asked. "My daughter, Katie. She goes near the forest perimeter all the time. We've tried to stop her, but she just keeps going back. The Razorbacks have seen her. I've watched them through the binoculars. They don't attack her. They just watch." "That doesn't mean anything," someone argued. "Maybe they're not hungry." Lisa Sullivan stood beside her husband. "Katie is different. She's always been different. Animals trust her, even the aggressive ones. Remember the cargo hauler's guard dog that bit 3 people? Katie walked right up to it and it let her pet it." Jake rubbed his face. He was tired and scared and running out of ideas. "That's not enough to base a plan on. We need real options." The meeting went on for hours. Some people wanted to fight. Others wanted to surrender and hope the Vexians would let them leave alive. A few suggested hiding in the caves and waiting for help that might never come. Katie wasn't at the meeting. She had slipped away from the education room while Mrs. Brooks was distracted. She walked toward the colony's edge where the red forest began. The guards were supposed to stop her, but they were all at the meeting. She stood at the fence and looked into the trees. The forest was quiet, but Katie knew something was watching her. She could feel it. The same feeling from her dreams. "I know you're there. she said softly. I'm not afraid of you. The bushes rustled. Katie's heart beat faster, but not from fear. From excitement. A massive shape moved in the shadows. It was bigger than a truck, covered in scales that looked like metal. Its eyes glowed like hot coals in the darkness. A razorback, Katie smiled. The creature tilted its head, studying her. For a long moment they just looked at each other. Then the razorback made a low rumbling sound and disappeared back into the forest. Katie returned to the colony before anyone noticed she was gone. But something had changed. The razorback had seen her. She had seen it. And neither of them had been afraid. That night, the colony prepared for the worst. They loaded what they could onto transport vehicles. They checked weapons and ammunition. They said goodbyes just in case. Jake Morrison stood on the command tower and looked at the Vexian ships above. They hung there like dark clouds blocking the stars. He had fought in wars before, back on Earth. He knew what losing looked like. This looked like losing. But he also knew humans didn't give up easily. Maybe they couldn't win, but they could make the Vexians remember this fight. They could prove that humans wouldn't just roll over and die. In the medical bay, Lisa held her daughter close. Katie seemed calm, almost happy. Mom, everything is going to be okay, Katie said. How do you know that, sweetie? I just know. The forest told me. Lisa looked at Ben, worried. But Ben just shook his head. Let her have hope, his eyes seemed to say. Even if it's just a child's dream. The first day of the deadline passed. The Vexians did nothing, just watched from their ships. They were in no hurry. They had done this before many times. They knew how it would end. But on the second morning, Katie woke up before dawn. She got dressed quietly and slipped out of the family quarters. The colony was still sleeping. The guards were tired and not paying attention. It was easy for a small girl to slip through the fence. Katie walked into the red forest as the sun began to rise. She didn't know exactly where she was going, but her feet seemed to know the way. The trees grew thicker. The shadows grew deeper. And somewhere ahead, something was waiting for her. Something that would change everything. Katie walked deeper into the red forest. The trees here were massive, their trunks wider than houses. The leaves made a soft sound in the morning breeze. Everything smelled clean and wild, like nothing humans had touched. She wasn't scared. She should have been. Everyone said the forest was deadly, but Katie felt something pulling her forward. Like an invisible string tied to her heart. She had to keep going. The forest opened into a clearing. Katie stopped and stared. 4 razorbacks were there. They were even bigger up close than she had imagined. Each one stood as tall as a small building. Their scales looked like they were made of metal, shining in the sunlight. Their claws were as long as Katie's arms. 3 of the razorbacks stood in a circle around the 4th one. The 4th was lying down, and Katie could see it was hurt. Its back leg was caught in something metal. An old trap, probably left by the first humans who came to this planet years ago. The 3 standing razorbacks turned to look at Katie. Their eyes glowed orange, like fire. They made low growling sounds deep in their throats. The sound was so deep Katie felt it in her bones. She should have run. Any smart person would have run. But Katie just stood there looking back at them. She didn't feel fear. She felt sad. One of them was hurt and the others couldn't help it. It's okay, Katie said quietly. I want to help. She started walking toward them. The 3 razorbacks moved, blocking her path. They were protecting their injured friend. Katie understood that. She would do the same thing. Please, she said, let me try. I can help. The biggest of the 3 razorbacks lowered its head until its glowing eyes were level with Katie's face. It was close enough that she could feel its hot breath. It smelled like the forest, like rain and earth and something wild. They looked at each other for a long moment. Katie didn't look away. She reached out slowly and touched the creature's nose. The scales were warm and hard, just like metal. But they weren't cold like metal. They were alive. The big razorback made a different sound, softer. It stepped aside. The other 2 moved as well. They were letting her through. Katie walked to the injured razorback. Up close, she could see the pain in its eyes. The trap was old and rusty, locked tight around its leg. The creature had been trying to break free, but the trap was made to hold things even stronger than razorbacks. I'm going to help you, Katie said. She knelt beside the trap and looked at it carefully. Her father had taught her about machines and how they worked. This trap had a release mechanism, but it was stuck with rust and dirt. Katie's hands were small. She could reach into places where big adult hands couldn't fit. She worked at the mechanism, pushing and pulling. Her fingers got dirty and scratched. The injured razorback watched her, its glowing eyes never leaving her face. "Almost got it," Katie said. She talked to the creature like it could understand her. "Just a little more there." Something clicked. The trap opened. The razorback pulled its leg free and stood up. It limped a little, but it was free. It lowered its massive head down to Katie and touched its forehead to hers. Katie felt something strange happen. It was like a door opening in her mind. Suddenly she could feel what the razorback was feeling: gratitude, relief, and something else. Friendship. Images flashed through Katie's mind. She saw the forest from high up, running through the trees faster than any human vehicle. She felt the wind and the joy of being powerful and free. She understood that the razorbacks weren't just animals. They were smart, maybe as smart as humans, just in a different way. "You can think," Katie whispered. "You can understand me." The razorback made a rumbling sound that Katie somehow knew meant yes. The connection between them grew stronger. Katie could feel the creature's mind touching hers, gentle and curious. "I'm Katie," she said. "What's your name?" More images came. Darkness and speed, moving through shadows. Katie smiled. "Shadow. I'll call you Shadow." Shadow made that rumbling yes sound again. The other 3 razorbacks came closer. They touched their heads to Katie too, one by one. She felt their minds as well, but not as strong as Shadow's. Shadow was special. Shadow was her friend. Through Shadow's mind, Katie learned things. The razorbacks had been watching the humans for 3 years. They were curious about these small, weak creatures who built strange structures and made loud noises. The razorbacks were old, much older than humans. They had lived on Kralos Prime for thousands of years. They had seen other creatures come and go. They had seen wars and peace. They were wise and patient. And they had been waiting. Waiting for a human who could understand them. Waiting for Katie. Shadow showed her images of the Vexian ships. The razorbacks had seen them too. They knew the humans were in danger. Shadow wanted to know if Katie's people would fight or run. "We don't want to run," Katie said. "This is our home. But we're not strong enough to fight the Vexians alone." Shadow made a new sound, and Katie understood it meant the razorbacks would help. But only if the humans proved they were brave. Only if they were willing to fight for their home instead of just giving it up. Katie heard voices in the distance. People were shouting her name. Her parents had discovered she was missing. Search parties were being organized. "I have to go back," Katie said, "but I'll come back soon. I promise," Shadow rumbled agreement, but when Katie started to walk away, Shadow followed her. The other 3 razorbacks followed too. Katie stopped and looked at them. "You're coming with me." Shadow lowered its body close to the ground. Katie suddenly understood. Shadow wanted her to climb on its back, to ride it. Katie's heart raced with excitement. She climbed onto Shadow's back. The metal scale shifted under her hands, creating ridges and handholds that weren't there before. Shadow was changing its body to make it easier for Katie to hold on. "This is amazing," Katie breathed. Shadow stood up. Katie was suddenly 12 feet off the ground, sitting on the back of the most dangerous predator on the planet. Shadow moved forward, smooth and careful. The other 3 razorbacks walked beside them. They moved through the forest fast, but Shadow made sure Katie didn't fall. The creature could sense her balance through their connection. Every time Katie shifted, Shadow adjusted. They reached the edge of the forest just as Ben Sullivan arrived with a search party. Ben saw his daughter riding on the back of a razorback and his face went completely white. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "Hi, Dad," Katie said, smiling. "This is Shadow. Shadow and his friends are going to help us." The search party members raised their weapons. Ben held up his hand quickly. "Don't shoot. Don't do anything," Shadow rumbled, and the sound made everyone step back. But the creature didn't attack. It just stood there with Katie on its back, calm and patient. Katie very slowly climbed down. Ben said, his voice shaking. "Dad, it's okay. Shadow won't hurt anyone. Shadow is my friend. That thing is an apex predator. Shadow is smart, Dad. All the razorbacks are smart. They've been watching us. They want to help us fight the Vexians." More people were arriving now. Lisa Sullivan pushed through the crowd and saw her daughter on the razorback. She made a small sound of fear but didn't scream. Amy Chen was there too, her hand on her weapon but not drawing it. Commander Jake Morrison arrived last. He stared at the scene in front of him like he couldn't believe his eyes. 4 Razorbacks standing at the edge of the colony, an 8-year-old girl sitting on one of them like it was a horse. And nobody was dead yet. Okay, Jake said slowly. Someone explain what is happening right now. Katie climbed down from Shadow's back. She walked to her parents and hugged them. Then she turned to face Commander Morrison. The Razorbacks aren't just animals, Katie said. They're smart. They think and feel and understand. They've been watching us to see what kind of people we are. They want to help us, but only if we're brave enough to fight for our home. How do you know this? Jake asked. Shadow told me. Not with words. With feelings and pictures in my mind. We're connected now. Jake looked at the Razorbacks. They looked back at him with their glowing eyes. He had been a soldier for 20 years. He had seen a lot of strange things. But nothing like this. Can anyone else talk to them? He asked. I don't know, Katie said. Maybe. Shadow says humans have interesting minds. Young and flexible. Maybe other people can connect with other Razorbacks. Amy Chen stepped forward. I'll try. She walked slowly toward one of the other Razorbacks, the one with darker scales. The creature watched her come. Amy reached out and touched its nose, just like Katie had done. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Amy's eyes went wide. I can feel it, she whispered. It's letting me in. The colony was in chaos. Half the people couldn't believe what was happening. The other half were too scared to care. Commander Jake Morrison called another emergency meeting in the main hall. This time Katie was invited. Shadow waited outside with the other 3 Razorbacks. More Razorbacks had come from the forest during the day. Now there were 15 of them sitting near the colony walls. The guards kept their weapons ready, but nobody fired. The Razorbacks just waited, patient and calm. This changes everything, Jake said to the crowded room. If we can work with the Razorbacks, we might have a chance against the Vexians. Or we might all get eaten, someone shouted from the back. Shadow won't let that happen, Katie said. Her voice was small, but everyone heard her. The Razorbacks want to help us. They've been alone on this planet for a long time. They want friends. Amy Chen stood next to Katie. She had spent the last few hours with the dark-scaled Razorback she now called Talon. The kid is right. I can feel what Talon is thinking. It's like having another voice in my head, but it's not scary. It's actually kinda nice. How many people can bond with these things? Jake asked. I don't know, Katie admitted. Shadow says not everyone can do it. You have to have the right kind of mind. And you have to be willing to trust them. Over the next few hours, 12 more colonists managed to form bonds with Razorbacks. Dr. Lisa Sullivan was one of them. She bonded with a smaller, faster Razorback that moved like lightning. Lisa named it Swift. Ben Sullivan tried too, even though he was terrified. An older Razorback with scars all over its body chose him. Ben called it Elder. The creature was patient with Ben's fear, letting him feel safe before deepening the connection. This is incredible, Lisa said, her eyes shining. Swift is showing me things. The history of this planet. There were other creatures here before, other civilizations. The Razorbacks remember all of it. Jake tried to bond with a Razorback, but nothing happened. He was too old, too set in his ways. His mind couldn't bend enough to make the connection. He felt disappointed, but didn't show it. That's okay. I'll coordinate from the ground. We need someone in command who can see the whole battle. The deadline from the Vexians was getting closer. They had less than 24 hours left. Katie spent every free moment with Shadow, learning how to ride properly. The Razorback's scales would shift to create handholds and grips. Katie learned to move with Shadow, to feel what the creature was about to do before it did it. Shadow showed Katie memories of ancient wars. The Razorbacks had fought before long ago when other dangerous creatures threatened them. They knew battle tactics and strategy. They were not just strong and fast. They were smart fighters. Amy Chen worked with Talon practicing maneuvers. She had been a soldier before becoming security chief. She understood combat. Talon showed her how Razorbacks fought in groups, coordinating their attacks without speaking. They had a kind of pack intelligence, all connected to each other. We can use this, Amy told Jake. If the riders can communicate with their Razorbacks, and the Razorbacks can communicate with each other, we'll have perfect coordination in battle. No radio delays, no miscommunication. Jake started planning the attack. The Vexians had landed a ground force of about 800 soldiers in Crimson Valley, 20 miles from the colony. They had set up a base there with defensive barriers and heavy weapons. The Vexians expected the humans to either surrender or try to escape. They weren't expecting an attack. The valley has steep sides, Jake said, pointing at a map. If we come from above, from the forest side, we'll have the high ground. The Razorbacks can move through terrain that would stop any vehicle. What about their energy shields? Someone asked. Katie spoke up. Shadow says Razorback scales can absorb energy. They've been hit by lightning and volcanic blasts. They don't get hurt. The Vexian energy weapons might not work on them. Might not, Jake repeated. That's not exactly reassuring. It's better than what we had yesterday, Amy said. Yesterday we had nothing. Ben Sullivan and a team of engineers worked through the night building armor for the human riders. They couldn't make anything too heavy or it would slow the Razorbacks down. They settled on light metal plates that covered vital areas. Ben also made a special armor set for Katie, smaller and lighter than the others. I don't like this, Lisa said, watching her daughter train with Shadow. She's 8 years old. She shouldn't be going into battle. She's the strongest bond, Ben replied quietly. Shadow follows her completely. The other Razorbacks respect her connection. We need her. I know, Lisa said, tears in her eyes. But she's just a baby. Katie heard them talking. She walked over and took her mother's hand. Mom, I have to do this. Shadow needs me. The colony needs me. I'm not scared. I'm scared enough for both of us, Lisa said, hugging her daughter tight. The Vexian commander, Ambassador Rekthar, sent a final message that evening. His face appeared on all the colony screens. He was tall and covered in purple scales with 4 eyes that never blinked. Humans of Kralos Prime, your time is up in 12 hours. We have detected no evacuation preparations. This is foolish. Do not throw away your lives for nothing. Leave now and live. Stay and die. There is no third option. Jake watched the message and smiled grimly. He's wrong. There's always a third option. That night, Katie couldn't sleep. She lay in bed thinking about the battle tomorrow. She wasn't scared of fighting or dying. She was scared of letting Shadow down. The Razorback trusted her completely. What if she made a mistake? She got up and went outside. Shadow was waiting near the fence as if knowing Katie would come. Katie climbed onto Shadow's back and they walked into the forest together. Just the two of them. In the darkness, Shadow showed Katie more memories. Times when the Razorbacks had been scared too. Times when they had to fight to protect their home. Shadow had lived for hundreds of years. The creature had seen so much, survived so much. And Shadow believed in Katie. Thank you, Katie whispered, hugging Shadow's neck, for choosing me, for trusting me. Shadow's response was a feeling of warmth and friendship. Katie felt safe there in the dark forest, protected by the most dangerous creature on the planet. They returned to the colony before dawn. The riders were gathering, checking their equipment and their bonds with their Razorbacks. Katie saw her mother on Swift, her father on Elder. Amy was with Talon. Others stood with their bonded Razorbacks, looking nervous but determined. Jake Morrison gave them their final briefing. The Vexians think we're weak. They think we're just another easy conquest. Let's show them what humans can do when we fight for our home. Stay with your Razorbacks. Trust the bond. Watch out for each other. And remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human who will come after us. Katie checked her armor one last time. Ben had made it perfect for her, light and flexible. She had a communicator on her belt and a small emergency kit. No weapons, though. She didn't need weapons. She had Shadow, the Razorback riders, mounted up. Katie climbed onto Shadow's back and settled into her position. The scales shifted around her legs and hands, holding her secure. Shadow stood tall, ready for battle. More Razorbacks had come from the forest. There were now 40 of them, some with human riders and many without. The ones without riders would fight alongside their bonded brothers and sisters. They were a pack, all connected, all ready. Lisa Sullivan rode Swift up next to Katie and Shadow. Stay close to me during the battle, Lisa said. I want to be able to see you. I'll be fine, Mom, Katie said. Shadow will protect me. I know. But I'm still your mother and I still worry. Katie smiled. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. The sun was starting to rise. The red forest looked beautiful in the early light. Katie took a deep breath and looked at all the riders around her. They were scared but ready. They were going to fight. Jake Morrison's voice came through the communicators. All riders, this is Commander Morrison. You are clear to proceed to Crimson Valley. Stay in formation. Follow Katie and Shadow's lead. And good luck to all of you. Katie leaned forward and touched Shadow's neck. Ready? Shadow's response was a deep rumble of excitement. The Razorback was ready. They were all ready. Let's go, Katie said. Shadow roared. The sound was so loud it shook the ground. All 40 Razorbacks roared with Shadow, a sound of power and fury that echoed across the colony and into the forest. The Vexians would have heard it 20 miles away. Let them hear it, Katie thought. Let them know we're coming. The Razorback cavalry charged into the forest, moving like thunder through the trees. Katie held on tight to Shadow, feeling the wind in her face and the power of the creature beneath her. They were riding to war, a little girl and her apex predator, leading an army that nobody thought was possible. The Vexians were about to learn an important lesson. Never underestimate humans, and never ever underestimate a child with a dream and the courage to make it real. The Razorbacks moved through the forest like ghosts. Despite their massive size, they made almost no sound. Katie held on to Shadow, feeling every movement of the powerful creature beneath her. Around them, 40 Razorbacks ran in formation, carrying 12 human riders and moving as one unit. Through her connection with Shadow, Katie could sense the other Razorbacks. They were excited for the battle but not afraid. They had fought before long ago. This was just another fight to protect their home. The forest began to thin out. Ahead, Katie could see where the trees ended and Crimson Valley began. The valley was a wide-open space surrounded by hills covered in red grass, perfect for the Vexian forces to set up camp. Bad for them that the hills were also perfect for an ambush. Commander Jake Morrison's voice came through the communicator. Razorback Cavalry, this is Morrison. I have you on visual from the observation point. The Vexian base is directly below you in the valley. I count approximately 800 soldiers, 50 combat drones, and 20 heavy weapon platforms. They have energy barriers around their command center. Katie looked down at the valley. The Vexian base looked like a small city of metal buildings and defensive walls. Purple flags flew from tall poles. Soldiers in dark armor walked patrol routes. Flying drones buzzed around the perimeter. Everything was organized and efficient. The Vexians had done this many times before. Amy Chen brought Talon up beside Shadow. How do you want to do this, Katie? It felt strange having adults ask her for leadership, but Katie was connected to Shadow and Shadow was connected to all the other Razorbacks. She was the center of the web. Shadow says we should hit them from 3 sides at once. Fast and hard. Don't give them time to organize. Shock and awe, Amy said, nodding. I like it. Katie divided the Razorbacks into 3 groups. She would lead the center group with Shadow. Amy would take the left with Talon. Ben Sullivan would lead the right with Elder. Lisa and Swift would move between groups, using Swift's speed to carry messages and help wherever needed. Remember, Katie said through the communicator. The Razorbacks are tough, but we're not. Stay on your mounts. Don't get separated. If someone falls, someone else picks them up. Understood, the riders responded one by one. Katie took a deep breath. She was 8 years old and about to lead a cavalry charge against an alien army. This was crazy. This was impossible. This was happening, Shadow, she whispered. Let's show them what we can do, Shadow roared. The sound rolled across the valley like thunder. The Vexian soldiers below stopped moving. They looked up at the hills and saw the Razorbacks standing there, backlit by the rising sun. For a moment, everything was still and quiet. Then Shadow charged. The world became motion and speed. Shadow ran down the hill so fast Katie could barely breathe. The other Razorbacks followed. 40 massive creatures running at full speed toward the Vexian base. The ground shook under their feet. The air filled with their roars. The Vexians scrambled to respond. Alarms blared. Soldiers grabbed weapons. The combat drones launched into the air. The heavy weapons turned to face the charging Razorbacks. Energy blasts filled the air, bright purple bolts that could melt steel. They hit the Razorbacks and Katie held her breath, waiting to see what would happen. The energy bolts splashed against the Razorback scales like water against rock. Shadow didn't slow down. Neither did any of the others. Katie had been right. The scales could absorb the energy. They're not stopping, a Vexian soldier screamed. The energy weapons don't work. Katie heard it through Shadow's enhanced senses. The Razorbacks could hear everything on the battlefield. Katie felt a wild joy rush through her. They had a chance. They really had a chance. Shadow hit the first defensive line like a meteor. The creature's claws tore through the metal barriers as if they were paper. Vexian soldiers scattered, trying to get away from the massive predator. Shadow roared again and Katie felt the sound in her chest. All around them, other Razorbacks crashed into the Vexian lines. Talon, with Amy on its back, moved like a dark blur, striking and moving before the Vexians could react. Elder fought with experience, using its weight and power to crush defensive positions. The combat drone swarmed toward them. Katie saw them coming, and Shadow knew what to do. The Razorback jumped high in the air, higher than Katie thought possible. Shadow's tail whipped out and smashed 3 drones out of the sky. They fell in pieces. Other Razorbacks leaped and spun, their tails and claws destroying drones with each movement. The Vexians had never fought enemies like this. Their weapons and tactics were useless against creatures that moved like dancers and hit like hammers. Lisa on Swift raced past, checking on the other riders. "Everyone okay?" She called out. "We're good," Amy shouted back. "Keep moving." The battle was chaos. The Vexians tried to form defensive lines, but the Razorbacks were too fast and too strong. Every time the soldiers grouped together, a Razorback would smash through them. The heavy weapons couldn't track targets moving so quickly. Katie saw the Vexian command center ahead. It was protected by the strongest energy barrier, a shimmering purple dome. That's where the Vexian leaders would be. That's where she needed to go. "Shadow, the command center," Katie said. Shadow understood. The Razorback charged straight at the barrier. Katie expected them to crash into it, maybe break through by force. Instead, Shadow did something amazing. The creature's scales began to glow, absorbing energy from the air around them. Then Shadow released that energy all at once, sending out a pulse that disrupted the barrier. The purple dome flickered and failed. "They can do that," Katie said in wonder. Shadow's response was smug pride. The Razorbacks had learned many tricks over their long lives. They crashed through the entrance of the command center. Inside, Vexian officers stared at them in shock. Katie slid down from Shadow's back, her small boots hitting the metal floor. Shadow stood behind her, making the whole building shake with each breath. "I want to talk to Ambassadors Rekthar," Katie said. Her voice was young but firm. The Vexian officers looked at each other. Then one of them pressed a button on a console. A large screen lit up, showing the ambassador's face. He was on his command ship in orbit, watching everything through cameras. "What is the meaning of this?" Rekthar demanded. "How are you doing this? Your weapons are primitive. Your numbers are few." "We're not using weapons," Katie said. "We're using friends." Outside, the battle was turning. The Vexian soldiers were retreating toward their landing craft. They had never faced defeat before and didn't know how to handle it. The Razorbacks pressed forward, driving them back but not killing them unless they had to. Shadow had told Katie that unnecessary death was wasteful. Ben Sullivan led a group of Razorbacks to destroy the Vexian communication arrays. Without communications, the forces in the valley couldn't coordinate with the ships in orbit. They were isolated and alone. Amy, Chen, and Talon led attacks on the landing craft, damaging their engines so the Vexians couldn't escape easily. The soldiers who wanted to surrender were allowed to. The ones who kept fighting found themselves facing creatures they couldn't hurt or stop. In the command center, Katie looked up at Ambassador Rekthar's image on the screen. "You need to leave Kralos Prime. This is our home." "We're not leaving, and you can't make us." "You're a child," Rekthar said. "The Dominion has conquered 47 systems. We do not retreat." "Then this will be the first time," Katie said. She turned to Shadow. "Show him." Shadow roared, the sound so loud it cracked the screen. Behind Katie, more Razorbacks appeared at the entrance to the command center. Through the windows, Rekthar could see hundreds more Razorbacks emerging from the forest. They had been hiding, waiting. Now they showed themselves. The ambassador's 4 eyes went wide. "There are hundreds of them. Our scans only showed dozens." "The Razorbacks are good at hiding when they want to," Katie said. "You thought you were fighting a weak human colony. But you're really fighting this entire planet. And the planet doesn't want you here." Jake Morrison's voice came through Katie's communicator. "Katie, the Vexian ground forces are surrendering." "We've won the valley." Katie looked at the screen. "Did you hear that, Ambassador? Your soldiers know when they're beaten. Do you?" Rekthar was quiet for a long moment. Katie could see him thinking, calculating. The Vexians respected strength above all else. She had just shown him strength that his entire fleet couldn't match. "What are your terms?" he finally asked. "Leave," Katie said simply. "Take your ships and your soldiers and leave our system. Don't come back. Tell the Dominion that Kralos Prime is protected." "Protected by what? By animals?" "By friends," Katie corrected. "And friends are stronger than any weapon." The battle was over. It had lasted less than 3 hours. The Vexian forces in Crimson Valley were either surrendered or retreating to their damaged ships. The Razorbacks stood among the wreckage, victorious but calm. They had protected their home. The sun was high in the sky when Commander Jake Morrison arrived at Crimson Valley with the rest of the colony's leaders. The valley looked like a storm had passed through. Broken drones lay scattered across the ground. Vexian equipment was damaged or destroyed, but there were very few bodies. The Razorbacks had fought to win, not to kill. Katie stood with Shadow in the center of the valley. Around them, hundreds of Vexian soldiers sat with their hands on their heads, guarded by Razorbacks. The massive creatures sat calmly, watching the prisoners without aggression. They were just making sure nobody tried anything foolish. Jake looked at the scene and shook his head in amazement. "I can't believe this actually worked." "Neither can I," Ben Sullivan admitted. He was standing with Elder, his hand on the Razorback's side. The connection he shared with the creature had changed him. He was less afraid now, more confident. Lisa Sullivan was treating injured Vexian soldiers with Swift beside her. The smaller Razorback helped move supplies and held equipment while Lisa worked. Some of the Vexian soldiers looked terrified to be so close to a Razorback. Others looked confused that the creatures weren't killing them. Amy Chen coordinated the cleanup with Talon's help. She had soldiers collecting weapons and securing the Vexian equipment. "We should keep some of this technology," she said to Jake. "Study it. Learn from it." "Agreed," Jake said. "But first we need to deal with the ambassador." Ambassador Zrekthar had agreed to come down from his ship. His shuttle landed in the valley an hour after the battle ended. He stepped out surrounded by guards, all of them looking nervous. The Razorbacks watched the shuttle land but didn't move to attack. Katie walked forward to meet him. Shadow followed close behind, towering over everyone. Zrekthar looked at Katie, then at Shadow, then back at Katie. "You are the one who speaks for the creatures," he said. "It wasn't a question." "Shadow speaks for himself," Katie said. "I just helped translate." "Impossible. These are animals, predators. They're people just like you and me. They think and feel and remember. They've lived on this planet for thousands of years. They're smarter than you think." Zrekthar knelt down so his eyes were level with Katie's. It was a sign of respect in Vexian culture, something he would never do for someone he thought was beneath him. "I have conquered many worlds, small human. I have seen many species fight and lose, but I have never seen anything like what happened today." "Good," Katie said. "Then maybe you'll remember it." Jake Morrison stepped forward. "Ambassador, let's discuss the terms of your withdrawal." The negotiations took several hours. Commander Morrison handled most of it, with Katie and Amy providing input when needed. The Vexians would take their soldiers and leave the system completely. In exchange, the humans would release all prisoners unharmed and provide supplies for their journey. But Zrekthar wanted something else. He wanted to meet Shadow face to face, not through a screen or from a distance. He wanted to stand before the creature that had defeated his army. Katie translated the request to Shadow. The Razorback agreed, curious about the Vexian leader. They met in the center of the valley. Zrekthar stood alone, his guards staying back. Shadow approached slowly, each step making the ground tremble. The ambassador held his ground even though Katie could see fear in his eyes. Shadow lowered its massive head until it was close to Zrekthar. The two beings looked at each other, predator and warrior. Then Shadow did something unexpected. The Razorback touched its forehead to the ambassador's chest just for a moment. Katie felt what Shadow was showing the Vexian. Images of the planet, the forests, the mountains. Memories of peace and war, of life and death. Shadow was showing Zrekthar that Kralos Prime had seen conquerors come and go, but the planet remained. The strong didn't always win. Sometimes the ones who could make friends were stronger than the ones who only knew how to fight. When Shadow pulled back, Zrekthar looked different. Shaken. Changed. He turned to his officers. "We leave this system. Mark it in our records. Kralos Prime is defended by an alliance of humans and the native species, not to be conquered." "But sir," one officer protested, "the Dominion has never retreated from a conquest." "There is a first time for everything," Zrekthar said. "And if we are wise, we learn from our defeats as well as our victories." The Vexian forces began boarding their ships. It took the rest of the day to evacuate everyone. The colonists watched from a safe distance, hardly believing it was really over. They had won. They had defended their home. As the last Vexian shuttle took off, Zrekthar sent one final message to the colony. His face appeared on their screens, proud but respectful. "Humans of Kralos Prime, you have earned the right to call this planet your home. But know this. What happened here today will be reported to the Dominion. Other species will hear of it. You have made yourselves noticed in a galaxy that is often cruel and dangerous, Jake Morrison responded. We'll take our chances. We've learned that we're stronger than we thought, and we've found good friends. The ambassador looked at Katie, who stood beside Jake with Shadow behind her. That child is remarkable. In our culture, might makes right. She has might beyond her years. I bow to her strength. And he did bow, a formal gesture of respect that shocked his own crew. Then the communication ended. The Vexian ships powered up their engines and left Kralos Prime's orbit. The colonists stood in silence for a moment, watching the ships become small points of light and then disappear. Then everyone started cheering. Katie found herself lifted onto people's shoulders, passed from person to person in celebration. Shadow watched with what Katie felt was amusement. The Razorbacks didn't understand human celebrations, but they could feel the joy and relief. That night, the colony had a feast. Everyone was there, eating and laughing and telling stories of the battle. The Razorbacks sat nearby, accepting offerings of food from grateful colonists. It turned out Razorbacks liked the sweet fruits that grew in the colony's gardens. Katie sat with her parents, eating and listening to the stories. People kept coming over to thank her, to praise her courage. It felt strange. She hadn't felt brave. She had just done what needed to be done. Are you okay? Lisa asked her daughter quietly. I'm tired, Katie admitted, and my legs hurt from riding Shadow for so long. Ben laughed. I think we're all going to be sore tomorrow. But we're alive. That's what matters. Commander Morrison stood up to make a speech. Today we faced impossible odds. We should have lost. But we didn't, because we learned that strength comes from unexpected places. Katie Sullivan, an 8-year-old girl, formed a bond with the most dangerous creature on this planet. She taught us that making friends is sometimes more powerful than making weapons. Everyone clapped. Katie felt her face turn red. She didn't like being the center of attention. From this day forward, Jake continued, the Razorback Cavalry is an official part of our defense force. Anyone who can form a bond with a Razorback is welcome to join. And Katie, if you're willing, I'd like you to be the liaison between our two species. Katie looked at Shadow, who was watching from nearby. The Razorback's response was warm approval. Okay, Katie said. I'll do it. Over the next few weeks, the colony changed. More people formed bonds with Razorbacks. Not everyone could do it, but enough could that the cavalry grew to 30 riders. Amy Chen became the cavalry commander, training people in riding and combat tactics. Dr. Lisa Sullivan started a research project, studying the connection between humans and Razorbacks. She discovered that the bond worked through something like telepathy, but it was more than that. It was a sharing of minds, a mixing of consciousnesses that made both species stronger. Ben Sullivan worked with the Razorbacks to explore the planet. They showed him hidden caves filled with ancient technology. The previous inhabitants of Kralos Prime had been advanced, but they had died out thousands of years ago. The Razorbacks had been their companions once, just as they were now companions to humans. Katie spent her days riding through the forests with Shadow, learning more about the planet and its secrets. The Razorbacks showed her places humans had never seen, beautiful valleys, crystal caves, mountains that touched the clouds. Word of the Battle of Crimson Valley spread through the galaxy. Other human colonies heard about it and were inspired. The Vexian Dominion, true to Zrekthar's word, marked Kralos Prime as protected and moved on to easier targets. Some species reached out to the colony, curious about the human Razorback alliance. Trade agreements were made. Kralos Prime went from being an isolated colony to being known across multiple systems. But the most important change was in how the colonists saw themselves. They weren't weak anymore. They weren't helpless. They had proven they could defend their home. They had proven that humans could make friends with anyone, even apex predators. 6 months after the battle, Katie celebrated her 9th birthday. The whole colony came to the party, and so did every bonded Razorback. Shadow wore a ribbon around its neck that Lisa had made blue and silver. The massive creature looked silly with the decoration, but Shadow wore it proudly because Katie liked it. As the sun set on her birthday, Katie climbed onto Shadow's back and they rode to their favorite spot, a hill overlooking the colony. From there she could see everything. The buildings, the farms, the people moving around, living their lives in safety.